Well, let's get another parliamentary perspective on the latest developments in the SNC-Lavalin affair and the crisis facing the Prime Minister and his government. Let's start here. A recent survey by Nanos found that Green Party leader Elizabeth May is considered the most ethical party leader in the country, and ethics is kind of what we're talking about with this story now. And she joins me from Ashcroft, British Columbia, as she gets set to make her way back to Ottawa for tomorrow's Justice Committee meeting. Elizabeth May, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Peter. Thank you.
How much trouble is the government in?
Well, I think Justin Trudeau is in a lot of trouble. Having one cabinet member say, I'm more comfortable sitting outside cabinet, but I'm in the Liberal caucus, being Jody Wilson-Raybould, was difficult enough. Having Jane Philpott reach the same conclusion does a couple of things. One, it closes the door on any Liberal strategy to say the problem was Jody, or Jody Wilson-Raybould simply didn't understand enough. She wasn't, she was under too much pressure, or any variety of that. Jane Philpott is also, like Jody Wilson-Raybould, widely respected before she entered politics, someone that all of us who've come to know her as a member of Parliament respect enormously. And this is clearly a decision based on personal integrity and a sense that she can no longer sit in cabinet. Now that creates a much larger problem. I mean, I have to say this scandal and what is alleged to happen is hardly the worst thing that governments have done. I think Harper's PMO did much worse in terms of contempt for our traditions and institutions. But this is a prime minister who established a brand on feminism, respect for First Nations, and being open and transparent. So attempts to intimidate an attorney general to help out a large corporation is exactly what you don't want to happen. I think Justin Trudeau somehow either has to win back the trust of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott, or he has to make major changes in his inside shop that surrounds him, and potentially, I mean, he's just got a very treacherous road ahead. He can't afford to be contemptuous, and he can't afford to be less than transparent.
Can he? How does he? Can he? Given what we've heard about where the Prime Minister and the PMO is coming at this from, how does he win back the trust of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott unless he completely dials back almost everything they've said so far about jobs and the need to do this and the need to do that, and that pressure is just the way it is, and all those things? He'd have to do a full retreat, wouldn't he?
He would, and I think he'd have to have a rather full mea culpa. He'd have to say, and I don't know what the truth is here. We still don't know. We know that a lot of people who surround the Prime Minister, in terms of the political staffers and the people who surround the Clerk of Privy Council and the Clerk himself, brought pressure to bear on Jody Wilson-Raybould, which she completely reasonably inferred was pressure directed at her under the direction of the Prime Minister. We still don't know whether, for instance, it's possible that former Principal Secretary Jerry Butts and the Clerk of the Privy Council decided on their own, let's make sure we fix this. The boss isn't happy and this is bad, and I bet we can fix it. How much did Justin Trudeau know they were saying in his name? Unlike, and I think you'll agree with me on this, under the Stephen Harper Prime Minister's office, the notion that anything happened there that wasn't directly due to Stephen Harper's instructions would be laughable, because he was a micromanager and he controlled everything that went on there. I think we've all observed that Justin Trudeau is not a micromanager. He delegates. His cabinet ministers have had far more of a role as independent a cabinet government than we've seen certainly under Stephen Harper. So it's possible that a lot of this happened without Justin Trudeau specifically sanctioning it. He'd have to do some serious housekeeping, and he'd have to commit and have to admit that he should have ensured that the role of Attorney General was respected. With her judicial hat on, she should not have faced this kind of pressure.
Right, but we've already heard testimony from her that Justin Trudeau was in the room for some of this, talking about the political implications in Quebec, and it's hard for me to see that this was all the work of people in his office without his knowledge.
Well, except that, I mean, you asked me if there's a plausible scenario. I don't know that this is a probable scenario, but the only evidence from Jody Wilson-Raybould's mouth of when Justin Trudeau personally spoke to her was the first meeting in the sequence of meetings that involved her. I mean, there was the Ben Chin intervention from Bill Morneau's office to members of her staff, but I think it was September 7th that she went in to meet with the Prime Minister on another topic, and the Clerk of Privy Council was there. That was the only face-to-face meeting where he said to her, "I'm concerned about jobs," and then she said, "Are you trying to interfere with my role as
Right.
Attorney General?"
Right. And he said, no, no. Yeah.
So
No,
that's the last
yeah.
conversation in which we have Justin Trudeau personally engaged in this. I'm just saying, you said what could happen. Who knows? Until we get all the information out, there are large questions. I think the likelihood is that he knew that what they were doing and thought it was a good idea, but we don't know that
Okay.
until we find out what from what. And I plan to ask some of these questions of Jerry
Well,
Butts.
I'm
And
going to ask you that now. So, in the minute or so left, a couple of quick questions for you. What do you want? What do you think Jerry Butts has to answer tomorrow?
well, I think well, why did you resign? I mean, if he claims he never did anything wrong, I don't understand why he resigned. I don't understand why his letter suddenly raises climate change. I certainly pushed this PMO as hard as I could to take real action on climate change and was rebuffed. There are a lot of questions to be answered about the relationship with Jody Wilson-Raybould as Attorney General. I'm also curious about the role of SNC-Lavalin lawyer Frank Iacobucci, former Supreme Court judge, who in the same 4-month period in which Jody Wilson-Raybould related the campaign of increasing pressure on her, that's in the same period of time in which Frank Iacobucci was retained by PMO to handle the Indigenous consultations on the Kinder Morgan pipeline. I have some questions about whether SNC Lavalin matters were discussed in the room when they were also discussing with him would he take on this role in ensuring the consultations met the legal requirements set down by the court.
And what about Mr. Warnick? You've expressed concerns about his testimony. You're going to get a chance to question him tomorrow. He'll be back before the committee. What do you think he needs to answer now?
I'd really like to get his sense of the multiple hats that the clerk of the Privy Council office wears. I mean, traditionally, our civil service is inherently nonpartisan. That's an essential part of our system. So the question I would ask him is, how did he understand his actions were partisan? If he thought they were nonpartisan, where's the evidence on which he based? I mean, for instance, we keep being told they're worried about jobs. But when you look at the SNC-Lavalin financial situation, number one, the province of Quebec owns a chunk of SNC-Lavalin. Some of the loans that SNC-Lavalin has are conditional on keeping the headquarters in Montreal. They currently have over $15 billion of confirmed contracts. So the job of the nonpartisan civil service surely would be to say, if people are worried about jobs, how realistic is that as a worry? Is this SNC-Lavalin doing the usual corporate trick of job blackmail in order to get something they wanted for other reasons? I mean, I think the nonpartisan civil service is there to do the research and prepare the evidence. So I really want to know from Michael Warnick, what evidence did you have, if this is a public interest matter, that jobs were at risk if the corporation SNC-Lavalin were tried for fraud? And lastly, very quickly, Peter, I think we really need to know, why was the decision made to charge SNC-Lavalin for fraud and corruption in its corporate entity? The usual route has been to single out a few individuals and charge them. What about this case made the prosecutor decide the corporation itself needs to face these charges?
Yeah, that's a big question. We don't know, right? Why did the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Minister of Justice and Attorney General at the time hold so firmly to this position that they needed to proceed with a criminal prosecution? That's an answer I think a lot of Canadians want to get at some point.
Well, I'll work on it tomorrow.
All right, Elizabeth May, thank you for your time today, and we'll see you at the committee tomorrow.
Thank you, Peter.